Matthew Brown, the Pentagon whistleblower responsible for the Immaculate Constellation Report, has come out with part 2 of his interview with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. We're going to review that here in just a moment. A crazy black ring in the sky. So far, the explanations have been hit and miss. We'll take a look. You tell me what you think. It's been 75 years since the McMinnville, Oregon UFO sighting and photograph. We're going to talk about that celebration here in Oregon and what that photograph did for the UFO community. We're also going to take a look at the real Secret of NIMH and what that's all about. Stay tuned for episode 2 of the Gabriel Speaks Podcast. All right. Thank you for tuning back in to the Gabriel Speaks Podcast. I really appreciate you being here. I'm so happy you decided to join me this episode. We're going to get right into it. Let's talk about Matthew Brown. Now, I covered Matthew Brown a couple episodes ago as part 1 of his podcast came out on the Jeremy Corbell show, speaking about Immaculate Constellation. He is the actual Pentagon whistleblower that came out with that information and that report. When he saw it was getting nowhere, he kind of felt left in a situation where he had to essentially come out and say, hey, this is the face. I'm a real person. I really saw this, and vouch for that report because he feels like the public should know the truth about what's going on. Let's take a look at a quick summary of what we learned in the last episode, and then we're going to jump right in to the highlights from part 2 of this interview. Pentagon employee Matthew Brown dedicates his professional life to the U.S. intelligence community and protecting the country from WMDs. Matthew feels a real pride and connection to what he's doing. He works day and night while watching others around him his age start families and live somewhat normal lives. But Matthew, he's got conviction in what he's doing. He's protecting us all from potential attacks by foreign and domestic operators. One night, while Matthew's organizing some files on a top secret Pentagon and intelligence network, he comes across a document called Immaculate Constellation. At first, he thinks this is some kind of war game. And as he opens the file, he sees, oh, this was a war game at Shriver Space Force Base. But upon further inspection, he finds some rather shocking details. What he finds is Immaculate Constellation is a multi-decade UAP UFO crash recovery program that is handled in a more classified way than the Manhattan Project was. That's more security and need-to-know protection than the first nuclear weapons program. Why was this program sitting in the files as a war game at the Pentagon? Alerted to what he sees, Matthew immediately reports the program to his direct superior, who quickly takes the matter out of his hands and gives him a chance to walk away from the discovery. However, Matthew isn't convinced that this is the best way to handle this situation. He's committed to protecting this country, and he doesn't accept as an answer to not worry about it. He attempts to further escalate the case without much luck, and eventually has to leak the Immaculate Constellation documentation and finally do an interview with Jeremy Corbell. After part 1 of that interview, we learned about a Russian activity in the middle of the ocean with multiple battleships that essentially it appeared to have hailed in some type of triangular unidentified aerial phenomenon. In addition to that, there are multiple other instances that Matthew uncovered through the program. What are those additional programs, you ask? Well, we're going to get into it here on part 2. Like previously, you will have to make sure and go to the Jeremy Corbell channel to check out the full interview. What I've done is condense it down to about 10 minutes of really fascinating testimony from Matthew Brown about what he discovered and also the crazy process to try to get this information forward. The Senate, all the committees in the House, all these folks that are high up are saying, whistleblowers, come forward, you'll have protection. What Matthew Brown experienced was actually a very unorganized, kind of uneasy, non protected feeling as he was trying to come forward as a whistleblower. This is some really eye opening testimony. Check it out and let me know what you think down in the comments.
Shows another Russian intelligence vessel underway, this time at night. The image is green infrared. And it shows above this Russian vessel another black triangle, but whereas the first example in the Pacific was an equilateral, large, pretty stunning object that was of comparable size to the vessels below it. This was a more definitely smaller. It was smaller than the vessel, and it was more angular. The fact that these incidents we are collecting these incidents around the world, that we are focused on UAP RB collection incidents by tasked and untasked assets, and the collection and analysis of those data streams. There was informal collections of this stuff by interested people on those systems, and there's absolutely professional mission tasked databases for this. I pull up that slide, and the first slide, just because it's so generic, gets no reaction. But then going to maybe the second slide or even the third slide, he's just like, okay, stop. Stop. Did you read this? And I don't answer, but I just look him in the eye and I look at the screen, and I'm like, of course I read this.
That's how you know it exists.
And he definitely picked up on that, and the conversation ended with him saying, delete it, and he left the room, and we never spoke of it again. Self-preservation. I need to keep doing the right thing here. Yeah. So I go to his boss, or his boss's boss. I pull it up. I start scrolling through it from the bottom. I get no reaction. Then he says, okay, let me look at it. He takes my chair. He goes through. He scrolls through it. No reaction on his face. I'm watching him very closely at this point because I'm exceptionally curious about all of this. No reaction. Then he scrolls through it again, and he makes a very deliberate scene where he pauses on Lou Elizondo's slide and starts guffawing in a very non-believable way and saying, somebody's having a joke. You don't need to worry about this. You can go. I try to ask him, like, are you sure? Like, do I need to sign anything? He's like, nope, you can go. And so I left that room and never, ever had anything about that incident come up again. The process of Grush coming forward left a wake on the inside, too. People were tracking that who weren't even involved, but were able to see sort of the distortions on the inside.
Distortions of truth.
Exactly. But also, bureaucracies and offices behaving weirdly around this subject, and sort of the movements for reaching out to Congress to get legislation drafted that eventually became that Intelligence Authorization Act and that first NDAA, where they provided whistleblower protections. Just on an emotional level and blunt analysis, why the hell is Congress passing a law asking for UFO insiders from the intelligence and military community to come talk to them directly under amnesty about something that doesn't exist, isn't an issue? And if it does exist and is an issue, but it's secret, apparently our most sensitive congressional committees are not briefed on that.
That is what's called a very valid point. Why does our Congress have to provide whistleblower for protections, asking for help to wrangle in something that isn't supposed to exist? I think what that means is that it does exist and there is something to these legacy programs?
The sort of UAP task force and its slow death on the inside, and the death of the sort of open exchange of ideas and problem solving going on was another data point that pointed to something rotten. Mm-hmm. And the last one that really sealed it and really convinced me that I need to find a way to bring this to Congress, no matter how small it might be, it apparently matters, was when I was in USDI, I read the transcripts of Sean Kirkpatrick briefing Senator Rubio, Senator Warren, and Senator Gillibrand on the results of his investigation in his congressionally tasked Arrow report. Mm-hmm. And those transcripts, which were supposed to be open kimono, here's the truth, Mr. Senator, Mrs. Senator, Sean Kirkpatrick absolutely distorted, downplayed, and can't prove it, but I would say outright lied to the people who have direct responsibility for him. A lie of the whole thing, the big picture, right? Mm-hmm. In the meeting, it's, Congressman Rubio, we've heard about this incident. We just don't have enough data to go on it to really know what this is. We don't have any way of really figuring out what's going on. It could just be an anomaly. In fact, it's most likely an anomaly. So starting with an acknowledgement that, here, you have some data, but we have the insight and the scientific expertise to make you feel at ease.
Nothing to see here, folks. Move along.
Exactly. I had inside knowledge into the deception of our government by elements of our intelligence community. My blood ran cold at a specific point in that transcript where Mr. Rubio is discussing the Legacy program. This was a subject of direct discussion with Sean Kirkpatrick in these meetings. And based on Mr. Kirkpatrick's replies about as vague as they were, but unable to escape the truth of the Legacy program, Mr. Rubio's response was, well, what the hell is the executive branch doing? Have they been running this for 60 years without congressional oversight? I might be paraphrasing a little, but that's near enough verbatim. And I saw that line, and I basically closed that file and had a pretty sleepless night. Yeah, at that point, I definitely knew the phenomena was absolutely real. I knew we were tracking it. I knew we had lots of resources on it for some time. But getting to that final step in the ladder and seeing and the cover-up is real, and it's inside the house. Why it may not be a good idea to censor our intelligence products that are circulated within our cleared community to our service members that are on the front lines every day is because you are blinding them to their environment. You are opening them to threats. You're exposing them to risks. And you are essentially inhibiting the pursuit of national security objectives by doing so. There's a reason you guys have talked to so many whistleblowers from the military who see these things. That's partially because they're reporting it, they feel endangered by it, and nothing is being done, and no answers are being given.
Oh, man. That is a part, as a service member, I'm going to be really frank here, that friggin' pisses me off. Withholding intelligence and putting service members in danger. Oh boy. This makes me really hope that folks like this keep pushing, because now we're talking about our men and women in the field. And as a prior service member, I can tell you, if you feel like they're messing with the intelligence, things get really, really tough because you got to basically figure it out for your own. And that's tough to do. We depend on our intelligence to give us the data we need to be safe out there. So that is quite worrisome to hear. All right, let's let him continue.
And they are, in some cases, suffering legitimate injuries. There's a lot of surveillance and reconnaissance platforms. Not all of these are controlled by military or national intelligence. OSD policy really only has control over operational SAPs and logistical SAPs. So I basically conducted my own amateur all-source analysis of what the U.S. government, specifically the DoD, because that's what I had access to, knew about UAPs. And I collected that information and sought out a way to go to Congress because they asked and provided amnesty for whistleblowers. If they did not want that, they should not have written that into a law. The next step is to figure out how to even get to Congress.
Okay.
And actually a little bit before that to figure out, like, am I even needed? There was no way that I could find to get into contact with Congress. I tried. So then I started talking to other people who were at that time more vocal about their intent to be a whistleblower to Congress. Met one person who did go forward, kind of watched that person without letting them know what I knew to see, what they were doing and how it went for them. At that time, it just seemed to be, the report was, I went in, talked with the staff. The staff then had a separate meeting to talk with the member. And there's no paperwork, no lawyers involved. It's just you're in, you say what you have to say, and you're out. Yeah, the first meeting, I wouldn't say I was especially transparent. I knew my bosses were lying. I'm talking to a permanent member of the Senate staff, not a member, an elected representative. I don't know what their agenda
Could have been
is.
bait. You would have been careful. It could have been bait.
So I shared, the attention grabber, the IMCON story. And slowly worked my way around those other categories of evidence, but left it at, like, I got more to say, but, like, we should probably, do you want me to say more? Like, what comes next? So what happens next is I'm told, okay, so we're going to set you up. To be clear, I spoke to a staff member from SISI. I was told that next you'll speak to a staff member from SASC, and then we will have a meeting with both SASC and SISI with the elected members of Congress there and the two people and the staffers that I spoke to. That's what's supposed to happen.
Right.
So none of those meetings ever happen. Weeks go by, I reach out. Hey, is this going on? Like, I told you I had more. I want to give that more to you, so I don't have it. When can we meet? Got the runaround. And then eventually the blunt reply, like, you either send me what you have in writing here on this non-official channel, or, you don't, and we don't need it. So I came to be disillusioned. At the time, I just, I came to believe, like, okay, I had something that was of minor importance. I'm just really not important enough to talk to anymore. After speaking to Congress as a whistleblower, I continued to interact with this person who was trying, or at least they told me they were trying to start a fund for whistleblowers to help get people out of the Legacy program who wanted to speak but couldn't because they were both afraid for their life and their livelihood. We'll make this organization that can contribute there. And so the honeymoon phase of, I spoke my piece, and now it looks like I'm helping the good guys and things aren't that serious, continues. The result of Grush and all that, we get the UAP Disclosure Act, or the attempt to do it. And so I think when that failed, was the first blow to that hope that, things would be handled constitutionally. So sort of what happens next is the UAP DA fails. And before that, we get word it's going to fail.
Right.
And this person tells me that Congress needs people to start fires to try to save the UAP DA. I ask him, are you serious? Is Congress has told you to ask people to make some noise and try to save this thing? That person told me yes. Set back in a different way, which was, well, shit, we still have all these people apparently who are in danger. There's no help from the government. There's no help from Congress. There's no help from Arrow. There's no help from people who say they care about humanity, but their actions don't bear that out. So back to square one, I observe what's going on, continues to go on. The final death of UAP Disclosure Act 1 and the attempt to get the second one, which is totally watered down and not even worth our time to consider. After I gave it to them the first time, they said, thank you very much. And then never heard again. So I decided to make myself a little dangerous and said, hey, I'm going to submit this for pre-pub review. And I'm going to brief my leadership at State Department on this, which I did. And then, after briefing them, I submitted it to pre-pub review.
I said it on the previous episode about Matthew Brown, and I will say it now. Let's make sure this man stays safe. Can we get a GoFundMe for Matthew Brown to make sure this man stays safe and his story continues to be told and gets in front of, I guess it needs to get in front of more people, because it sounds like the people it got in front of, I guess, didn't really give a shit about it, which is kind of disappointing. He talks about the fact that there is a legacy program. At this point, there's really no getting around it. Does that mean all of the stories out there about the legacy programs, that every single one of them is true? Absolutely not. But we do know that we've had a legacy program, and now we've got a person that's confirmed it, that has been inside the Pentagon, inside the classified halls, if you will, the digital classified halls, and has now confirmed it. Now it's just a matter of, what do we have? What are we doing with it? What have we done with it already? Very interesting. I look forward to part 3 with Jeremy Corbell. I imagine there's probably going to be a few more bombshells on that one. Remember, tune into his YouTube channel, watch the full interview, and then you can scoot back over here and we'll talk about it some more. The McMinnville UFO photographs taken on May 11th, 1950 by Paul and Evelyn Trent near McMinnville, Oregon, are among the most iconic images in UFO history. Take a look at this photo. Again, May 11th, 1950, and it's hard to call that photo a fake, which is why it became so iconic. According to the Trents, their story, Evelyn was out feeding rabbits on their farm when she noticed a metallic disc-shaped object in the sky. She called for Paul, who retrieved their Kodak camera and captured 2 black and white photographs before the object flew away. The Trents initially withheld the photos, fearing potential trouble, but eventually shared them with a local banker who displayed them publicly. A reporter from the McMinnville Telephone Register published the images on June 8, 1950, garnering national attention. In fact, Life magazine featured the photos later that month. Over the years, the photographs have been subject to extensive scrutiny. In 1967, Dr. William Hartman of the Condon Committee analyzed the images and found no evidence of tampering, suggesting the object was real and physical. However, he also noted the possibility of a small model suspended from power lines, as the object appeared beneath the same spot in both photos. In 1975, optical physicist and ufologist Brian McCabe conducted his own analysis, concluding the object was not a hoax and was located at a significant distance from the camera. He based his findings on photometric measurements and the object's brightness relative to other elements in the photos. Despite the controversy, the Trents maintained the authenticity of their experience until their deaths in the late 1990s. Their photographs have become a significant part of UFO lore, leading to the establishment of this annual McMinnville UFO Festival, one of the largest such events in the entire United States. The McMinnville UFO photographs continue to intrigue both believers and skeptics, symbolizing the enduring mystery surrounding unidentified flying objects. So if you missed it this year, make sure and catch it next year if you're into that kind of thing. Apparently, they had an absolute blast down there. When I was younger, one of my favorite cartoons to watch as a kid was The Secret of NIMH. There was something about it that I just loved it. It wasn't one of these, not to knock the big D, ISNEY, but it wasn't that genre. It was this different genre, and it felt very organic and real. And I always loved that movie. The thing is, as a child, I didn't really understand what that movie was about. In 1982, an animated film called The Secret of NIMH, based on Robert C. O'Brien's novel Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH, tells the fictional tale of super intelligent rats who escape from a lab from their own and form their own hidden society. Behind this fantasy, there's actually an eerie connection to a real world psychological experiment conducted at the National Institute of Mental Health, specifically the infamous Mouse Utopia experiment by behavioral researcher John B. Calhoun. So in the 1960s and 70s, Calhoun created controlled environments for mice, often called mouse cities, designed to be a rodent utopia, limitless food, water, shelter, and no predators. Initially, the mice thrived, but as the population grew, things took a dark turn. Mice began exhibiting antisocial behaviors. Mothers neglected their young or became aggressive. Male mice stopped competing for mates or became excessively violent. Some mice, dubbed quote unquote the beautiful ones, groomed themselves obsessively but didn't interact socially or reproduce. Eventually, the entire population collapsed, even though resources were plenty. Calhoun coined the term behavioral sink to describe the social decay from overcrowding and lack of meaningful roles. His findings were seen as a cautionary tale for human society, how abundance without purpose could lead to destruction. In the movie, the rats of NIMH were subjected to intelligence-enhancing experiments, making them smarter, stronger, and more aware of their captive condition. They eventually escaped and created an underground society beneath a rose bush, a seeming utopia from humanity. But within their society, there's conflict, hierarchy, and even existential threat. The rats wrestle with ethical problems, dilemmas like, should we steal electricity from the humans? Some want to expand beyond the rose bush. Others want to retreat and build something new, mirroring societal conflict and the stress of advanced intelligence without clear direction. Like Calhoun's mice, they face the burden of unnatural evolution and the psychological weight of awareness. While The Secret of NIMH adds fantasy elements, the thematic undercurrent close to Calhoun's work. What happens when a species is pushed beyond its natural limits, given intelligence, comfort, and safety, but stripped of meaning and natural struggle? Just like the utopia of the mouse cities crumbled, the rats of NIMH must grapple with how to find purpose, govern themselves, and survive in a world they've outgrown biologically and socially. And what I thought was very fascinating in the film is the constant reference to some superior intelligence, a way to plug into some consciousness, some network, some energy, that if you had the focus and the practice, you could do. The so-called CIA and other intelligence agencies' interest in this program and what it may have meant for humanity. If we get to a point where we can be provided everything at a whim, and we don't have a clear mission, what is the point of humanity? It's a good question. And if you haven't watched the movie since you were a kid, I suggest you check it out. So it's an interesting study on the human condition. And who would have thought they could have plugged that all into a cartoon? It's wonderful. And I just, watching it again as an adult, it was just amazing knowing, the things it was based on. At any rate, let's take a look at this weird black ring phenomena that this biker saw on the side of the road. Uh, Check this out. It's super crazy. There were some comments that it was some kind of smokestack or smoke release or gas release, which could definitely explain it, but it looks super weird. Take a look at this.
So, can somebody tell me what the heck is this? And I'm not using no app. I am on County Road 2 in between State Avenue and Cape 32. And I have never seen anything like that in my life. And it appears that little black stuff is falling down the center of it. That is just weird. And then just to let you all know, I'm not kidding here. This is real. Sorry, that's my phone doing that because it's a piece of crap Motorola. But just so you can see, it's me. And I'm live. And it's starting to dissipate. Look at that. Tell me that is not freaking weird.
If you know what that is, leave a comment below because I don't. I have no idea what that is, and it looks super cool. At any rate, let's move on here. Ross Coulthart is at it again, and he went down to the Arizona and New Mexico border this last weekend to do some investigation work with some of these reports that the Border Patrol agents have come forward with about some UAP down there. In particular, I guess what they call the duck, the rubber ducky UAP, which is a great name. Let's take a look at Ross Coulthart found. I picked some highlights out of this in his interviews down on the border and what they had to say about some of these UAP reports that they've been turning in.
There's a lot of stuff that's been cited out here.
Like what?
Well, for one, the rubber duck video. This is ground zero for where the rubber duck was filmed.
This sighting was recorded and tracked by an RC-26B aircraft on an infrared camera on November 23rd, 2019. And like many famous UFO videos, it's become known by a nickname derived from that unusual shape. It's called the rubber duck.
This video is taken down on an area known as the Buenos Aires National Wildlife Area.
Were you able to speak to the pilots from the surveillance aircraft that recorded this?
I was, and I actually spoke to the sensor operator. They seemed to think it was searching for something.
The rubber duck immediately struck the pilots as peculiar. Its shape didn't match a plane or a drone, and neither did its cold thermal signature. That's why they decided to track it for a full 40 minutes.
They definitely thought it was anomalous.
And the rubber duck wasn't the only anomalous video that came across Bob's desk.
Now, during your role in border protection, there came a time when you suggested to your superiors that you start preparing some kind of research report into what was being seen.
I did put together a report, what they call an issue paper, and get that subject kind of on the record.
Higher-ups at Border Patrol showed little interest in the rubber duck video, at which point Bob says he received permission to share it externally. In addition to the rubber duck, Andy has now released and nicknamed more videos on Bob's behalf. They include La Bruja, Spanish for the witch, shot in the Tohono O'odham Nation Reservation on May 30th, 2021.
So those cows are reflecting back that black hot. The object up at the top is white, which means it's ice cold.
But if it was a drone, you would, number one, see the heat signature.
Probably a lot of us have seen those videos, right? If we've been going down, researching this stuff and trying to make heads and tails of it. So the rubber ducky video has been out there for a while. The video with the guy that looks like he's on a jetpack or something. I know that's been out for a while too, but it is nice to hear some technical analysis on what it is we're actually looking at, and just some facts from some folks that were actually on the ground there that got the data out. I find it also interesting that the government is like, we're not really interested, but sure, you can go ahead and send this off to whoever. That's so weird to me how they have folks just run with certain stories, but yet with other stories, you hear about them really trying to clamp down and keep them from getting out.
Rich Hoffman, head of the SCU, is familiar with Bob's leaked video. Do you investigate something like UAP?
We take all of the best cases, the ones with actual good, solid sensory data that we can actually go after and really study.
La Bruja, the witch, it was captured in, I think, February 2020 using a mobile scope truck. What can you say about that?
Well, let's take a look at the wind speed on that day and at that time. And I say, well, wait a minute, there's no wind on that. So what's moving that? It's not going to be a balloon.
Do you think it's under apparent control?
Yes, I do. I think that in this case, this one is an unknown.
Well, we have an object here moving along at a steady clip in the desert, and it doesn't seem to conform to the shape of a drone or a plane. The camera is in a mode where black is hot, which means that the potentially anomalous object here is very cold. And that's strange, because if it's an animal, it should be warm.
And if it was a machine, you'd expect it to be hot as well.
Yes, because you'd expect some kind of exhaust or propellant. And so the temperature of this object, as well as its shape, suggests that this is something worth studying and trying to explain. The thing is, videos don't just stand on their own. We also have the corroborating story of not just regular witnesses, but military people who are trained to identify foreign aircraft.
Was there anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
There was 71 Papa Golf negative.
I don't know what it was. It wasn't an airplane.
That's why they pressed on, submitting their videos to the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. And rather than dismissing those sightings, the group took one of them, the so-called rubber duck video, seriously enough to commission a 47-page report. It was authored by this man. What are we seeing here?
Well, first thing is, you see all the green writing is called metadata. And with that data, you can actually analyze a lot about the actual video. The settings in the metadata, that white is cold compared to black that's hot.
That means, like La Bruja, it can't be a drone.
You can't tell from this video which way the wind is blowing, but the pilots said it was going against the wind.
And that means it can't be a balloon. What were you able to figure out by looking at the GPS coordinates?
The green is, you see the actual GPS coordinates on there, is the path, and see it circling.
Circling? For 40 minutes? But how and why?
We have no rational explanation that we can come up with to explain how you can get this effect, what it would be doing, moving for this length of time.
Lack of a better term, almost like they seem to be absorbing light. They're not reflecting light at all. There's some cases where they come up, they're darker than the rest of the environment.
Almost like a black body source.
Like a black body source.
Do you believe that what you are seeing is potentially evidence of a non-human intelligence?
Yeah, I think we have to consider that. It's something that needs to be considered. I mean, we have to collect more data, but I mean, there's some bizarre features of these objects. So at least the technology is quite different from what we've seen previously. And it certainly doesn't align with current day technology. The changes in spectral signatures and the sudden appearances and disappearances and some of the flight behaviors.
So Ross Coulthart doing kind of Ross Coulthart things. I'm glad he's out there doing it. The more folks I see get out there and do it, the happier I am. As long as they're not trying to like ascribe some kind of narrative and really just trying to get to the bottom of these stories, I love it. I'm fascinated by all of these stories that are coming out. There are so many interesting characters kind of, coming out of the woodwork. Like, I'm super fascinated by this character I've come across lately. His name is he goes by a pseudonym. He's written a book. He's a rumored time traveler. He works for NASA. He helped Elon develop the Dragon rocket. His nickname at NASA was the guy can access the archives at the Vatican without even having a bodyguard or supervisor with him. This is someone that's super plugged in. No wonder they go by a pseudonym. But I am just at awe at this story. I think once you start researching it a little bit, you'd be pretty fascinated too. We're definitely going to talk about that one on one of our later episodes. Let's talk about Matthew Brown again for a minute. Folks, please, can we make sure that this man stays safe, protected, and his story and the facts that he has come to light? As I've said before, I don't think messing with national security is a good idea. But I do think if there is another intelligence out there that some folks know about and some folks don't, it's time for that wall to be broken down. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching the Gabriel Speaks Podcast. I appreciate you checking it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and come back next time for our next update. Have a great one, y'all.